Okay, so out of respect for the people who have signed on early, welcome everybody. Welcome to ArtCenter College of Design, and welcome also to this webinar. I am Jeff Wardle. I am responsible for running this program. And for those of you who don't know, this graduate program was set up at ArtCenter about 10 years ago. And although ArtCenter is very well known for its undergraduate transportation design program, which is generally about how to design cars, and actually quite a few of us on this call, we know how to do that as well. But this program was specifically set up to look at transportation in a much more holistic way from a systems point of view. And the real reason was that we foresaw that there were a huge number of profound changes coming at the transportation industry, not just the automobile industry, but every aspect of transportation. And we realized that the world was going to need a new kind of designer, a designer who could understand the complexities of transportation, understood all of the profound changes that were likely to come along, whether it was geopolitics or energy futures, or manufacturing technologies. We wanted to make sure that this new generation of designer was able to graduate and join the industry and help the industry navigate through these changes using their sort of creativity and strategic thinking. And there are other multidisciplinary experience as well in the program. So that's what this program is all about. And I think it's fair to say that during the 10 years that we've been running this program, it's become more and more apparent to us that as transportation designers, unless we really understand our built environment and how people want to live in that environment and how people need to live in that environment, we can't really say anything very intelligent about what the new future transportation systems need to be. So that has very much become the focus of our program. And I think as we move forward in the program, we intend to dig even deeper into that. So that's just a little bit of background into what the program stands for. And I'm going to hand over in a minute to two faculty members, Lucian Rosca and Giulia Morisano, who have been running this studio project, and they'll tell you a little bit more about the studio project itself. While you're listening to the students who are going to present, and they'll introduce themselves in a minute as well, hopefully you'll have plenty of questions and answers. Or at least you'll have plenty of questions. We're supposed to have the answers. So if I could suggest you put those in the Q&A box, which you should see at the bottom of your screen. And you can do that while the students are presenting, and I'll collect the questions, and we can ask the students to field those questions at the end. We'll leave plenty of time to do that. As you would imagine, about an hour ago, as we were doing a dress rehearsal for this, we discovered that ArtCenter's computer network seemed to be going through a hoopla. So that threw us into a tailspin, but we seem to have got through that. But I'm sure that some unwelcome technical snags will hit us, as they tend to do with Zoom webinars. So please bear with us if that happens. There may be a little bit of lagginess in this because of those technical hurdles. And I think we're going to put, or the students are going to put, or give you a YouTube link for the presentation as well, so that if you miss anything or you have to leave the webinar before it finishes, but you're interested in seeing the whole thing, you should find that on the YouTube link, which will be presented to you earlier. So with that, I'm going to ask Lucian Rosker, just to talk a little bit more about where this particular class fits into the program, and tell a little bit about himself and his background, and he'll hand over to Julia afterwards. So Lucian, let me hand over to you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Lucian Rosca. I'm a full-time faculty here at in the Graduate Transportation Systems and Design at ArtCenter. I'm with this program since its inception in 2012. And I graduated actually from ArtCenter in the 80s. I was a student, transportation student here. And perhaps since I graduated, the world, as Jeff said, changed a lot, transportation included. And we see a lot of transformations actually coming in the next years and decades. And this is one of the projects where we look at this future and we try to create a vision for it with our students. Along the years after my graduation, I worked for a number of companies, car companies like Volvo and General Motors, but also transportation companies like Yamaha. In our program, for students to graduate, they need to go through 6 terms. And the work you will see today from our students is work done in over 2 terms, term 3 and 4, practically their middle work in during this stay at ArtCenter. Our students come here from very different backgrounds. They have a background in, some of them in business, some of them in architecture, urban planning, transportation design, interaction design, and others. We see these very different backgrounds as a very big advantage, because looking at the transportation in the future, we see that transportation will be very much connected, as Jeff said, with other fields, especially architecture, infrastructure, and or how we call it here at ArtCenter, sometimes space. We look at spaces. But also we are looking at communication. In the future, mobility devices, as we call them, and then spaces will communicate among each other. And we see this as a very different system from what we have today. The students in the first 2 terms practically get a knowledge of design principles, visual communication, digital skills, and also they learn how to make either physical or digital models. Once they finish the 2 terms, they start this project in the 3rd term, and it's a very wide horizon project, practically looking at a very wide area of what is going to be available in the future for transportation, and what the trends are, and how we see mobility systems evolving. With the exception of their thesis project, which is in terms 5 and 6, this is one of the, if not the most significant project they go through at ArtCenter. I also need to add that in our classes, we try to replicate the real world design studio experience. And for this project, the students work in a team. They are just 5, then we couldn't create more teams, but each of the students also during a phase of the project had a lead design or a team leader position. and they had to practically, they were responsible for their team work during that phase. At the end of the fourth term, the students have the choice of getting internships if they desire. And then with this occasion, I like to congratulate 3 of the students who got internships for this summer. 2 of them with General Motors in Warren, Michigan. And then 1 student with Packard Kenworth in Seattle. Now I will let Julia explain the details and the parameters of our project.
Thank you, Lucian. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for what is, I really hope, is going to be a very exciting moment to look at what the students have been trying to do, what they put on the table, and something that hopefully will get us to reflect upon in this multi-disciplinary audience as well. So my name is Julia Moresano, and I am new to ArtCenter. I, differently from Jeff and Lucian, I do not have a background in car industry, and I look at transportation from a different lens. I am, by training, I am an architectural designer as well as an urban planner, and I am finishing up my PhD in architectural studies and urban studies. So I bring a little bit of a different kind of expertise to the table, which I think speaks really to the ambitions of the program as well as the studio, to really understand how transportation cannot really work in a silo, but it exists as part of different kinds of systems, and it affects those different systems in multiple ways. So this is the kind of expertise that I bring to the table, to the studio, to ask the students to think about the space that where their future transportation system will be integrated, and to really think about space, and actually better, the environment as a whole, both in terms of our physical environment, the built environment, but as well what we breathe in, and the effects of almost 300 years of industrialization and brought upon our planet. So for this studio specifically, Lucian and I have asked the students to rethink the future of the LA metro area. When we conceived the idea of not confining the students only to a specific portion of LA, or to just focus on LA, but to think about really the LA metro area, is because as many different reports from Yuhan Habitat to different kinds of companies, we know that metropolitan area are here to stay and here to grow. So for us, it was important for the students to get a glimpse that when they're designing the future of transportation, they cannot think only about a small little section, both in terms of space as well as the different kinds of fields and different kinds of interlocutor that they will have to speak to, both in terms of industries as well as in terms of governments and municipalities, which I have experience with, as well as with different kinds of stakeholders that go from the street vendor to really the big corporation owner. So this is also leads to the idea of what Lucian and I have asked the students to do, which is not a master planning of the entire LA metro area, but it's a vision, a set of strategies and tools that they have come up with a lot of creativity, a lot of research, and a lot of efforts to think through as a kind of a repository of different strategies that can be implemented together to create a new way of understanding how we live based on how we move. So what you're going to see with the students as well is rethinking how mobility doesn't only have to intersect vehicles, but it might also have to be do with walking. So you're going to see a lot of this, and you're also going to we have thrown at the beginning, and the students might tell you that yourself, at the beginning, it felt very insurmountable. It felt very ambitious to really have a handle of thinking about how to change the way of living by actually thinking about the way we move for the whole ginormous area, which is Metro LA. But with time, I think both us as instructor, but especially the students, start to understand how the metropolitan LA area also offers a great opportunity to rethink how the diversity that exists in our world, but not only in terms of activities, in terms of businesses, but also in terms of people, in terms of the different kinds of residents that occupy this very large area, and how we can think about a system to help better, I mean, to really remediate 300 years of industrialization and try to create a sustainable future for us, but one that is especially equitable. So those words, diversity, equity, and especially environmental concerns, those are all keywords that the students have held very dear, and that in LA, because of the diversity in terms as well of ecosystems, allow us to really make some of the proposition that the students will walk you through. All of them, and I am really proud to say this of our students, have worked so much, both in terms of a group. So they have created this system holistically that really touches upon many different facets of what it means to live anywhere in our planet, and they have done that relentlessly, working together, collaborating, learning from each other, you know, really enriching and using the background and the different interdisciplinary background of each of them to actually construct this very holistic vision for what the future holds for us, which actually in these very grim days, it is a fresh breath of air. So I don't want to hold up the time for our students to shine us through. So Kiran, I know that you probably will take the lead. Go ahead, introduce yourself and introduce your project.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiran, and I come from an architecture background, and I joined the Graduate Transportation Systems and Design program. And like Julia mentioned, we've been learning multiple fronts of design in a holistic way. And over to Lorraine, you could probably introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, this is Lorraine with the background of industrial design and mechanical engineering. Welcome to our presentation.
Hi, my name is Arya, and I'm coming from an industrial design background, and we're very excited to show you what we've been working on so far.
Hey guys, I'm Darin. I'm also from China, and I graduated from UC Irvine with a background of business economy, and very proud to present this project to you guys.
Hi, my name is Saman. My background is industrial design. I'm from Iran, and I'm really excited to show you what we have been preparing for you.
Awesome. So let me start sharing my screen. Let's get started. So welcome to Los Angeles Vision 2040. And thank you, Jeff, Julia, and Lucian for the introduction to our program, and as well as the Urban Form Studio. After months of research and ideation, we really look to reimagine the future of transportation in Los Angeles metropolitan area. And today we are, like we mentioned, we are very much excited to present our vision today. But before we get a glimpse of what this vision is actually about, Arya is going to walk us through the insights and opportunities we found in this journey.
Transportation has been shaping how the cities have been created in the past of Los Angeles. In the 20th century, the red car had an extensive track coverage of 1,100 miles throughout the LA metropolitan area, connecting various towns and neighborhoods. As the automobility hand in hand with suburbia emerged in the 40s and 50s, the way we move changed for the years to come, making us car dependent and ultimately causing urban sprawl. Let me show you in details what challenges this has brought for us. Nowadays, we use cars even for the smallest of errands, such as grocery shopping. This dependency on cars has led to many complications, such as congestion. And even by today, the traffic issues not only haven't been resolved, but also have gotten worse, which ultimately creates time and energy inefficient commutes. And we end up spending a lot of time in traffic. We also realize that the single private ridership, which has been promoted by the car ownership, isn't working anymore, since it is adding more to these problems. For example, this inefficiency of commute time is evident when we consider the same commute by car at 6 a.m. from Pasadena to Santa Monica would only take 30 minutes, in contrast with an hour and a half when you commute at 8 a.m. At the same time, people are embracing micromodes of mobility, such as scooters and bikes, to commute in shorter distances due to its versatility. The use of micromobility in our car-centric streets is unsafe, as there is no proper space for these devices to safely move around. On the other side, there is currently no proper integration of micromobility within the public transit, and this has made micromobility ineffective as a first and last mile mode of transit. But this has not only affected the way people move, but also the way goods move, globally and domestically. We have been relying on imported goods, including many food items and other common goods, to arrive in the region via the port of LA. This over-globalization has not only made us dependent on imported products, but also affected our planet negatively through the emissions. Another issue, which I believe all of us here have also experienced, is the pollution caused by the car dependency, and in particular, single passenger ridership, especially notable during the winter inversions. Ironically, emissions and pollutions over the years have damaged our atmosphere so much that has led to climate change, which we're seeing its direct effects since a few years ago with more frequent wildfires.
But this won't work anymore. We have to put a stop to the effects caused by more than 200 years of industrialization, and for that reason, there is no future in car ownership. Not that we are taking away everyone's car right away, but instead focusing on more sustainable modes of transit which suit the commuter needs.
This new system we envision will keep future technology advancements in mind, a system that looks to embrace autonomy. The advantages of autonomous mobility devices and extended reality environments have huge potential in solving various societal problems, from increasing accessibility to mobility to decreasing congestion. A system that is designed for the 21st century residents, defining new ways to engage, move, and participate in the city.
We designed a vision by rethinking the mobility of people, information, and things, creating a system that can convince people and incentivize them to rethink car ownership. We repurpose and redesign the energy system which powering the whole city in a more eco-friendly way. By revisiting the mobility in an urban area now, we redesign the system also influence the urban planning and street design, also serves for a logistic delivery system with flexibility, achieving full localization and well prepared for the state of emergency.
Today, the transportation sector accounts for 21% of the worldwide pollution. This situation is no longer sustainable and viable. So when a situation hits like this, how can one of the most polluted sectors in the world be transformed into a producer of clean energy and a distributor of energy? Today in the United States, you can get a tax rebate from buying an electric vehicle, but how do we incentivize people to choose a more sustainable way to move around without having to rely on car ownership? And how might we get people enrolled in our subscription system? Based on the reasoning of the tax rebate, we have devised a new ecosystem with its new currency, which generates energy based on mobility. This currency is called the energy point, which people can gain more by using a more sustainable way of transportation. And people can spend the energy point on lowering their energy bills.
As Darin explained, the energy point will be the core of our system, incentivized by the local government. Also defining how mobility services will be provided and users will be rewarded by such points by using various forms of transportation system. We truly believe that the residents are the core of our project, and we want to improve their travel experience within the LA metro area. To achieve that, we need ultimate freedom, a flexible and versatile system for the users. A subscription plan can leverage such a goal by giving various options which best suit the rider's commute needs at any time, in addition to taking care of all maintenance aspects. In this new structure, the government will be the policymaker and overseeing body which collaborates with the private sector to provide mobility services. At the same time, this can be a business model in which existing companies can expand their services, realizing that there are other stakeholders such as businesses, their profitability, and overall a healthy industry with competitive prices for the users must be considered. This subscription also aims in putting such companies in conversation with one another. Over the past decade, the existence of more flexible modes of mobility like rideshare services such as Uber and Lyft has proven public transportation as inflexible and showing such mobility solutions as more desirable for the rider needs. But even that has its own problems, such as the cost, which is not comparable to public transit, reliance on fossil fuel consumption, and beyond. That said, people do not see public transit as a replacement for private car ownership and the old way of thinking, putting more buses everywhere. That doesn't work in the vast areas of LA metropolitan. Now, there are some mobility devices that we have created in which manufacturers can produce and which service providers can provide to riders. For this, we have created Micro for short distance commutes, Mega for long and faster commutes, and Flex for ultimate flexibility for each lifestyle while promoting high occupancy riderships. Imagine that you're going to a short family getaway over the weekend or going for a hike on another day. By subscribing into the new Envision model, the user enjoys accessibility to unlimited categories of vehicle depending on type of usage or lifestyle at any time: economy, premium, outdoors, and utility. This gives an unlimited choice for the users to select from, customize and enhance their experience without being bound to any specific device and having to look after its complications. Depending on the frequency and distance of commute, the users have the option to subscribe to their desired mega plan, which gets them to farther distances across the metropolitan area upon demand, breaking away from the existing stop-based commutes. Using machine learning and cloud technologies, the subscription plan connects users together for more time destination-based journeys. Users have the option to subscribe to a wide variety of micromobilities, whichever they please: e-bikes, bikes, scooters, and what we are also proposing today, a four-wheeler micromobility. Via the subscription plan, the users can access any sort of mobility depending on their location. This platform connects user demands in a specific zone to the distributor, allowing sufficient devices to be collected and distributed in desired zones. Additionally, by benefiting from level 5 autonomy, users can request four-wheeler micro to pick them up at their location. As my colleague Kiran will show you later how micromobility and other modes of mobilities will be integrated within the city structure. As the aim of this new system is to create the ultimate flexibility for the users, the digital interfaces also allows users to choose, add, remove, and any mode of transit according to their needs based on types of commutes, distance, and lifestyle. This subscription plan also takes the energy credit of the user into account when choosing from a wide range of mobility options. The user is able to keep track and manage their energy credit via this interface.
Obviously, flexibility is paramount, and that's what makes micromobility advantageous. However, today we see scooters and bikes are scattered everywhere in LA, resulting many cities to ban them. In addition to the words everywhere, they are everywhere except when you need one. Even if you find one, they are either in poor condition or not getting properly charged. So energy distribution and circulation are the base of this design, for which we adopt and interact through two objects. One interacts with the scale of the neighborhood and facilitate the micromobility, and the other one is an infrastructure of clean energy that not only recharge mobility devices, but also gives energy back to the city. Both of them operate to clean the city in terms of visual obstacles and energy. To remediate the accessibility and charging problem of micromobility, we have invented a device called the micro distributor, for which I'm going to use MD for abbreviation later on, which is a functional vehicle as the provider of the two-wheelers. Based on real-time data and GPS, the MD can distribute, collect, and sanitize the two-wheelers from orders of nearby users. In addition, the MD is responsive and flexible as it doesn't have a fixed route. For example, when there is a sudden need in a specific area, it could stay out of its normal zone and respond to the urgent need. The MD carries two-wheelers with maximum occupancy of 10. When it's loaded with two-wheelers, it provides wireless charging for the two-wheelers. Most of all, the MD will be responsible for collecting the cross-source energy from the two-wheelers contributed by the users. The MD is a device that proliferate the micromobility. But then what is the future of the relationship between mobility devices and the energy ecosystem, and how the collected energy being contributed to the city? And that goes to new infrastructure I mentioned previously called the replenishment center, which I'm going to use RC for abbreviation. RC is the future of the energy distribution of vehicles. It has three major functions. The first one, providing the energy for mobility devices like MD, Flex, and Mega through battery swap. And second is the cabin change for Flex. And the last function is the distribution of goods. And at the same time, RC now just gives energy to mobility devices, but also act as a power plant in the city that occupies some of the obsolete infrastructure like gas station. Battery swap is extremely efficient as it takes only 2 to 3 minutes to complete the replenishment from 0 to 100%. Today, a company called NIO has gained great success from adapting this technology in China and Norway. Battery swap has a rule which requires the battery to be standardized. In our system, there's only two types of vehicle, Flex and the micro distributor, that need frequent replenishment. So the battery could be standardized, and it's operated automatically by robotic arms and happening underground. And here's the exploded view of the RC. At the bottom is the battery swap mechanics. On the level 1 from left to right, there's a micro distributor and Flex swapping their batteries. And the Flex is changing the cabin from goods cabin to a passenger cabin. In the middle of level 1, there's the storage for the batteries. And at the right, there's two Flex with goods cabin being distributed. On the second floor, there's the storage for the goods waiting for distribution. And level 3 is where all the cabins for Flex are stored. Rooftop is a huge solar panel so that this RC can generate energy on its own. So let's take a look at how those mobility devices and new infrastructures are situated in the built-in environment.
Thanks, Darin. As Darin mentioned, on how we would reappropriate space, I will be talking about how space needs to not simply be repurposed, but how it needs to be reconfigured in a way that allows people to participate and move within this new system. Today, with 47% of trips taken by Angelenos being less than 3 miles, there is tremendous opportunity to rethink short trips and how first mile and last mile is integrated with longer trips. How can we design strategies for short trips that incentivize people to shift from cars to more sustainable and healthier mobility choices? For which, we looked at mobilities that were predominant before car ownership, like walking, biking, and the famous streetcars of Los Angeles. But today, as we know, it can be difficult and stressful to walk, where the dullness of walking through streets built for cars can be a hostile experience. How many of us walk or bike to get to a local coffee shop? Do you feel safe or even incentivized to adopt newer mobilities other than your private car? To the second point, it gets even more complex when micromobility users are in constant struggle for agency and right of way in automobile dominant environments. But most important of all, the present system is rigid, where street use isn't flexible to meet the needs of residents, a situation where certain roads are congested with cars at one point of the day and with pedestrians at another time. If you need to change the way people move, you need to think and redefine how the public realm intersects with the environment. With multiple companies working on autonomous technology, we questioned how the infrastructural needs of today would meet the requirements of these new devices. In fact, autonomous vehicles do not need lane markers or signages for wayfinding, as they see our world through zeros and ones. This presents an opportunity to eradicate redundancy of cluttered information, where even today, we have increasingly gotten used to our beloved phones to navigate through environments instead of signboards from the previous century. This digital realm is increasingly integrated into the way we move. Technologies such as augmented reality can give us opportunities to rethink the ways in which people engage, interact, and move within our spaces, allowing us to seamlessly communicate with each other and with these new intelligent mobility devices, from wayfinding to collision avoidance. But this digital experience can be highly inaccessible, where augmented reality only caters to the owner of the device. What if you don't need a device for this flexible digital experience? Surprisingly, there is existing research on holographic projection technologies that shows promising results. This in turn can make technology more accessible, where you won't be needing a device to access this digital realm, in a way democratizing how people interact with this environment. To summarize, we present to you three core strategies characterized by this intersection of the physical and digital environments that can enable flexibility of street use. Strategy 1, bringing back the public realm to people by introducing elements that make a street relatable to the human scale through activity-oriented design. This would involve elements like streets, like trees, to soften the hardscape of buildings, elements that involve public activity zones like retail. The second strategy is how the streets has to be more accommodative of these new various mobility modes. This strategy also brings back the streetcar in the form of the mover, a mobility device that is free to use without a subscription to meet in-town mobility needs. The third strategy is kind of a culmination of strategy 1 and 2 on how digital navigation tools where intersections and streets are overlaid with holographic projections can ensure right of way for all modes involved. These three strategies can push to create flexible streets that are accommodative of the needs of people and mobility, a concept where the same street bustling with micromobilities and flexes in the morning can transform to a pedestrian-only retail experience in the evening. Now over to Lorraine, who would be expanding on how a system looks at repurposing and looks to meet exciting, interesting opportunities.
Thank you, Kiran. So as we all know, today we're facing a supply chain problem globally. Owing to the long-lasting COVID-19, the global supply chain is under huge challenges. This impact has influenced many industries, from high-tech chips to mass-needed supplement like food. Additionally, like many other modern cities, LA covered its ground with concrete, and in this concrete jungle, 1/3 of the ground is providing services for cars instead of human. However, we create a favorable environment for cars, hope it can bring more convenience to people, but the fact is, it ends up to be a pain for city planning and taking over too much spaces unnecessarily. Before we jump to the solution to this problem, let's take a closer eye on LA's food supplement conditions. It's been said that in LA, if you know someone's zip code, you know his health. Because of the disengagement among communities continues, lack of efficient mobility also leads to food crisis. Part of the LA are regarded as food desert, which means residents have no access to healthy food or they cannot afford them. Geographically, zones regarded as food desert mostly located along freeways. However, not just suffering in food instability, people living here also facing problems with housing, education, jobs, etc. But if we look back to LA's history, the county once was, until the 1950s, the largest agricultural county in the United States, until urbanization stamped through the state. The pavement of freeway boosted to enable high-speed transportation and solidify the economic geography in the region. For long, freeway served as a conservation force in the process of urbanization and arteries of economy. We prioritize the efficiency of motors. The truck delivery system served as a backbone of mass-produced mega-farm system in suburb area. In this case, peasant farming in the urban area are less competitive. The decrease of urban agriculture because of the rising price and truck-based delivery system caused problem for food supplement in LA County. As we successfully transfer from soil to concrete, we also risking 1/3 of citizens under food crisis. And today, we have huge opportunities for changes. Previously, as LA urban area was designed to be car dependent, many places in LA Metro are providing services not for people, but for cars. We have 6 million of parking spaces, 1.5 for each resident, including children, and nearly 600 gas stations. In the coming future of transportation system driven by electric and autonomy will enable changes in urban land use. We have a history that from soil to concrete, it might be the right time for LA from concrete to soil. The system we designed has two main attributes to meet this goal: flexible urban logistic delivery and urban farming. We're providing food locally with easy access through urban farming with a subscription-based delivery. And our urban farming can also provide citizens with job opportunities, healthy lives, and educate people with a more responsible production and consumption. Additionally, we can save the soil in urban area and also recycle the water. Urban flexible delivery system divided urban places with low and high density areas. During different times in the day, the system has different delivery plan. While people are less active, Flex can be used for delivery in both low and high density area, using freeway as the main entry, connected by urban distribution centers in the urban area. The delivery system prepared for the supplement. During the daytime, some high density area eliminate Flex delivery and give the place back to the people. Flex still operating in low density area and freeways, but in high density areas, goods will be delivered by micro. In this way, we create a flexible delivery system connect with distribution center, which runs differently by time. So here, let's take an eye of the urban distribution center. This is repurposed by today's gas station, which also providing service for cabin changes and energy reloads for mobility. Flex will bring goods here as a stop with autonomous road sorting and road planning. Since we are not taking that much space for parking in the time of autonomy, we can repurpose them by public places, housing, retail, and etc. Here shows an example of using this space as pop-up market. Open market in the urban area has different purpose based on time, selling different things and have different events. It is a colorful space where we can appreciate the inclusivity of different cultures here in LA. Also, the parking on street can be reused for urban farming. Farms on the street can be taken care of by local citizens, which can provide fresh food at the same time educate people with more responsible consumption. Operated under the subscription model, the street farm picked up by residents and delivered by micromobility to people's home. The system can also generate more job opportunity and serve as a social space for the communication in communities. We are looking for a future which in this city, people no need to be back to the land, they already there.
Until this point, Lorraine has successfully showed us an application of our system. So let me show you another implication of our system. In an attempt to answer and cater to specific phenomena, that's what it means to live in a city which is fighting emergencies resulting from climate change, which is a direct consequence of 200 years of industrialization. We are asking ourselves how to live in a continuous state of emergency and be able to create a resilient city, powerful enough to counter the effects of climate change, especially in California, which we are having more and more wildfire seasons, and it's a common phenomenon. The outcomes of climate change have put us in a situation where emergencies are inevitable. We define these emergencies in two categories. One is mundane routine emergencies, day-to-day incidents, and extraordinary emergencies caused by wildfires, earthquakes, and tsunamis. These scenarios are all needed to be considered for our design. To answer the problem mentioned, we have devised a plan called the Magna system. And this system utilizes our vision in a way to respond to emergencies through two main steps. One is observation through real-time data analysis, and the other is preventative measures. For observation, we are utilizing our devices, Mega, Flex, Micro, with addition of drones, which are our resilient providers. For personalized assistant experience in case of emergency, we are utilizing data from our subscription database. As described, the vehicles and objects in our system are designed to take action and proactively make sure that our city responds to any threats. Even in critical times of evacuation, our devices are in service of people. It is also important to mention that many companies and research institutions are looking for the ways forward to utilize all these sensors and cameras and image processing techniques to help for data collection that can be used by law enforcement, fire department, and other agencies to act and respond to mundane day-to-day and extraordinary incidents. We talk about the addition of drones. Drones are resilient providers. They are kind of a checking and preventative tool in our system, and they are operating hand in hand with the fire department. They are also part of emergency response protocol. Drones are nimble, agile entities that can navigate among the vast landscape of Los Angeles metropolitan area and provide access to far-off zones. At the same time, also to reach the people that might be in areas of LA that they don't have access to internet or technology, so they act as a very fast and flexible modes of informing people, verifying information, and basically providing a plan of action. Now we are going to show you an example of how drones can be tools of life-saving. By scanning the environment, places that are hard to reach, like natural, chaparral-covered trains and power lines. Also, the act of emergency by providing safety for commuters in mountainous areas and hills is also another example. Together, hand in hand, our devices and drones help us to counter-effect the effects of climate change and be ready for any threatening scenarios for future residents of LA.
Now that we have understood this system, let's look at what a day in LA 2040 looks like.
Welcome to Los Angeles. It's 5 a.m. in Los Angeles. Goods from the mega farm are being delivered by Flex fleets. Here is one of the fleet that is moving to downtown LA to deliver packages to people. One Flex leaves the fleet to get to the replenishment center. Here in the replenishment center, Flex goods transfer the packages within the center while swapping its battery, while another Flex completes last mile delivery.
The streets allow for larger vehicles to complete delivery tasks at this time. It's 9 a.m. South Broadway Street intersections get to work based on machine learning and predictive analytics. It prioritizes cyclists and pedestrians. Here, a micro comes to collect and distribute potatoes from one of the urban street farms. This is David. He is going to meet his friend in Santa Monica and uses the subscription to plan his journey. The interface provides his trip itinerary. At the same time, there is an increase in demand for e-scooters in the area. The micro-distributor moves autonomously to drop off e-scooters at various pickup locations. The semi-autonomous e-scooters move out of the distributor. David walks toward the pickup location and is greeted by the device. He navigates through the streets, watching people going about their daily rituals, something that was impossible just a few decades ago. This is Bob. He's out having a quality time with his grandchildren. They see a mover approaching and decide to get on to go down the street. Along the way, they see a pop-up market that has opened up for this week. They decide to get off to have some street tacos. After eating, they decide to go back home, for which Bob uses his old phone to book a micro four-wheeler. Meanwhile, David has reached the mega station. At the same time, a micro-distributor picks up e-scooters from station to meet e-scooter demand in the region. This is Lily. She commutes to work every day from downtown to Santa Monica using her e-bike. She takes her bike and boards the Mega. The Mega departs the station, rapidly moving along the freeways, while Lily has the comfort and privacy to focus on her task. Her bike is now giving back charge to the energy grid, which was generated from pedaling earlier on. That way, she earns energy points. The Mega will replace today's light rail to access more dense zones. This is Santa Monica. The light rail station has been repurposed to a Mega station. The Mega arrives here in 15 minutes, what could take up to an hour in the past. Lily gets off with her e-bike, knowing that she has contributed to the energy system. Meanwhile, at the replenishment center, a previously used goods flex gets its cabin replaced with a passenger flex. These are 4 friends coming from an event. They decide to use a passenger flex to go back home. Every passenger will be dropped off at their desired destination. As the flex goes on to drop off the last passenger in North Hollywood Hills, it detects a potential fire hazard. This flex communicates with the system. This in turn activates drones to inspect the area for a fire hazard. The drones, detecting the situation to be a major hazard, activate the evacuation protocol in the region. The system reroutes other mobility devices to make way for the responding fleet. Meanwhile, drones provide necessary medical kits to trekkers in the region. We designed a vision by rethinking the way people, nature, and things move. We do this through creating a new flexible system, revisiting older systems of mobility like walking and use of soft modes of transportation, rethinking the way we access food, a system that subverts car ownership and transforms the mobility industry as a producer of energy. In a future state of the planet, that is always an emergency. This is LA 2040.
Now, through our vision, we have presented what LA can be in 2040, based on rethinking the ways we move around and interact with our city. But we always have one thing in mind, connecting people of LA Metropolitan with their city. Well, our principle was to give back LA Metropolitan to the residents by reusing the way the new mobility devices and new ways of moving affects the built environment. And this is how we did it. The most important thing that we do with our system is to give back the city to the residents, to avoid making LA a city based on cars and making the inhabitants its guests. We want to make sure the humans once again are the host of the city. Thanks for being a part of our journey through mobility. Will you join us in this vision? Let's talk.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, team. Great work. And I think for our audience, it just underlines the incredible interconnectivity and therefore complexity of trying to figure out what the future opportunities and solutions are for a complex city like Los Angeles. Have a question to ask as well, so let's in fact some more questions and answers coming in. So Saurabh and incidentally, Saurabh is one of your predecessors. He graduated a little while ago from our program. And he asks, he'd like to know more about how your concepts might strive to address accessibility for mobility for folks who maybe are visually impaired or indeed have other challenges to their mobility. I'm not sure who would like to answer that question.
So that's a great question. I can answer that. So yes, there were a lot of considerations we had when we were looking at how augmented reality could actually hinder accessibility to the visually impaired population. That's one of the reasons we looked at holographic projections, that it can be more accessible to more people to access mobility in the first place. And the visually impaired population, yes, we did consider them, but we did not get them more into the scope of the project. But the various mobilities we've designed is flexible enough so that it can accommodate a visually impaired population as well.
Thank you. And Emil has also asked about, could somebody explain a little bit more about your energy point system and how this solution is a producer of energy instead of a consumer?
So yeah, all the mobility devices in our subscription system are run by clean energy, and the energy point is created to encourage the user, the citizen, to subscribe to the system. The more sustainable way of transportation they use, they can get more energy point, and those points they could be used for lowering their bills for like electricity usage. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And
so through this way, we're using the energy point system for encouraging people to use more like micromobility, use a more eco-friendly way of mobility.
And Saurabh, great to see you, Saurabh. Saurabh, another former graduate of our program, who congratulates you, by the way, on your work. He's interested about how you see your ideas being implemented considering the investment, resources from multiple stakeholders, whether it's from OEMs, the construction or real estate industry, city planning, etc. Anybody like to take that on? That's probably a presentation in itself, trying to figure that out, but maybe some of you have been thinking.
Shorter answer to that, Jeff, would be a collaboration, close collaboration between the companies, the private sector and the public sector. That will be the key to this concept, which, as we have planned out in our subscription, we have considered all these types of private businesses to be collaborating with government, which provides the rules and regulations and oversees all the activities. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
It seems that a few people have also wrote questions in the chat, not just in the Q&A session.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions in the Q&A box though. So, Julia, would you like to extract the questions from the chat?
Yeah, and I think that Prashanta has actually copy pasted her question in the chat to the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah.
And Prashanka is asking, first of all, congratulating for the great work to the team. And then it is asking how the system that you have devised is different from the taxi services, how it is supplied and who provides that service. How is that different from the taxi service that we have today?
So the answer to that will be basically we're having Flex as the passenger mode of moving around people. We're not particularly envisioning taxi in this concept. We're only looking at the way people move, the nature of mobility, why people move. And based on that, we have created concepts. For example, if somebody needs to move for a far distance, Mega will be an ideal choice. If somebody is looking for a weekend getaway or an event with friends, going out on a date or something, they would get a Mega. They would get a Flex in this scenario, and that will be provided using the mobility as service companies. They will be the providers of such services.
Thank you. And also a question from Pallavi. How much consideration did you guys give to, for instance, eVTOL or Hyperloop in your LA 2040 vision?
Can probably answer part of it. And I think Saman can expand more on the eVTOL bit. I can talk more about the Hyperloop bit. So we did consider a lot of options to implement Hyperloop, and one of the major parameters which came in essence was the urban morphology of Los Angeles and many United States cities, which is the grid-based system and the freeway-based system. And we understood that it would be much more advantageous to repurpose these freeways into autonomous vehicle corridors, which can move at higher speeds. And this kind of ties in with the earlier question, which talks about cost of implementation. And we had a lot of thoughts on, yeah, we could put Hyperloop stations underground, make people move really quick. But we took the approach where we wanted to repurpose most of the infrastructure which LA already has, which includes metro rail, light rail systems, the freeways, and also, like Lorraine in our presentation had talked about how we repurpose parking lots and spaces. So our major vision had turned into something where we are using what LA has and not looking at creating new systems altogether, but using the system of present LA and implementing a system over it. I think Saman can talk a bit more about the eVTOL.
Yeah, thanks, Kiran. Yeah, initially we looked at eVTOLs as a potential way of mobility, and we did a lot of study on this type of new mobility. We know it's a emerging industry, and it will be in the future, but to introduce as a grand vision for LA and to able to connect people and mobility together and being inclusive about it, we concluded that eVTOLs would not be a good choice. One is the scaling problem of eVTOLs. Imagine scaling this type of nimble, agile aerial transportation to a mega metropolitan city like LA. It is possible, but we feel like it will not be beneficial for everyone to see highways of moving vehicles on the ground and also on the air. That the scaling requires us to build new infrastructure, aerial airports, that requires maybe building aerial towers for landing, safely landing and lift up of these vehicles. So we kind of favor to keep our mobility system on the ground and trying to optimize on-ground transportation through 24D technology.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of us in this program are thinking a lot about the future of eVTOL and its implications in a city like Los Angeles. I have a question now from James W. It's a two-part question, really, and he says, great work, and asks whether you could elaborate on how to leverage the existing network of metro rail modes of transport. So how will underground networks be used? For instance, you mentioned that Santa Monica to downtown Los Angeles indicated a repurpose, but there is a broad network already, he comments. And James also asks, will all existing rail corridors be repurposed?
I think I can answer that bit too. So it comes to the description of how today's light rail, according to me, is an autonomous vehicle, but it goes on rails. So the whole idea had come about when you need to make people tap into the public transit of networks, which also goes underground in certain sections of LA, which gives a lot of positive contributions where you can access more dense areas. So, but there is also a potential when freeways and metro rail tracks intersect. That's when we thought that if Mega is basically a faster light rail, but it doesn't need tracks to go and move around LA, it can actually move through freeways and simultaneously tap into the light rail system also. Hence, having more access to sparse locations next to freeways, as well as dense zones which are already accessible through certain light rail routes. But I have to mention that there are certain problems where certain light rail routes cross through on ground, and which we were having a lot of questions and debate over what the speed of Mega should be in such places and how it would accommodate traveling on ground versus going underground. But in essence, like I mentioned, Mega, like Arya was talking about, is a vehicle which can tap into both of these systems, hence increasing accessibility all across LA. I think Arya, if you want to expand more, you could also.
Yeah, I think Kiran, you covered pretty much everything. So I would let other questions also come in so we can get to those as well.
Okay, ready for more questions. They're coming in. So let's see. Yeah, in light of recent worldwide catastrophes, and this comes from Nurbe, again, a former graduate of ours. Nurbe asks, in light of recent worldwide catastrophes, COVID, for instance. Can you expand on how you envision such a flexible system would help LA build resiliency during such a catastrophe? I think that's a really great question too.
Thanks for this question, and I can answer this question from the perspective of logistic delivery. So as we all know these days, there's a huge congestion in LA ports caused by long-lasting COVID, or it's already a huge problem that influences everything. So that's actually a problem created by the over-globalization. So that's also an insight we get from our research that we need to do something for localization, especially for something like food or some other basic supplement. So that also triggered us to design this system with a flexible time and also some repurpose of the land use of gas station to make it a republishment center to put logistic insight, and also all these things happen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, a question now from Fijay. Good to see you, Fijay. Congratulations you, great work, guys, but it comes with a tricky question here. So listen to this. So these vehicles with different cabin sizes are essentially still cars. The roads today are overflowing with congestion already, and these vehicles will be still tied to the same road network infrastructure as all of the other vehicles. So he asks how you would use this mobility as a service, how would it improve the actual experience of moving from one place to another?
So the way we started to tackle the problem and design solutions was not to create physical objects or products to solve it. Yes, it might look like a car as we define it today, but the way we designed it is to tackle a mobility problem. Right now, the problem that we have regarding the traffic is because everybody is on the road, one person driving a car that is about 5-6 meters long. And if you take out the people out of these cars, there are not that many people compared to the size that they're getting on the highway. And that causes traffic, people commuting to work, running errands for simple things, relying on vehicles, just one person per vehicle. This system wouldn't work anymore. And the way we've designed the system is that people would use the right format of transit according to their need. If they're commuting a long distance, they wouldn't necessarily rely on a car. They would use a much faster system, in our case, Mega, which connects two far away distances. But again, if you have a lifestyle, every one of us wants to enjoy a nice weekend or a night out with friends, etc., you would probably want to get a vehicle that also you can share with people, not only, again, you. So we don't characterize it as a car that is, again, being defined and identified today. And also, if you're moving it within town, going out for a grocery shopping or running small errands in your neighborhood, you would use micro, which is, again, far more smaller than a vehicle that can fit from one person up to two people. And we have different modes of micromobility here that we're talking about. Regarding the infrastructure, as I think Kiran mentioned earlier, we didn't want to create new infrastructure. We wanted to reuse what we have today. We have already been creating systems so far that have been developed over the years that are basically not going to be used anymore. So we don't want to deconstruct everything and construct new things, and that which, you know, involves a lot of funds and money being wasted. And again, it becomes obsolete in a few years. We want to avoid that obsolescence. So we want to reuse what we have today and make it more efficient and flexible for future.
Okay. Another question from Saurabh. Asked you whether you could talk a little bit more about how you arrived at the Vision 2040, particularly the 5 themes, and why 2040 was specifically chosen as your target year?
I think perhaps the 2040 question might be answered better by myself and Lucian, as we have kind of imposed it upon the student. But I think the students could talk about and respond to the first part of the question, how you arrived at the vision, and especially why those 5 themes and how that speaks to your own process. Let's start with that, and then Lucian and I will explain briefly why 2040.
It was quite an exciting journey over the 2 terms where when we started, of course, we did not have these exact 5 components, but it started feeding into one another, and we started figuring out what kind of abilities were needed, what kind of spaces were needed, what kind of opportunities were present. And these 5 components were a result of continuous collaboration and talking through the various opportunities and how we could respond to LA's needs. For example, one way in which we would structure the 5 components was the flexible mobility needs, the energy ecosystem, and the spatial part of the micro experiences. So these 3 kind of make the core system, but the food localization and the energy response is how we use this system to cater to more goals. So to answer your question, maybe there is another component. We could solve housing problem in Los Angeles. We could solve water shortage in Los Angeles, probably with the system. We don't know yet, but the whole idea was to create a system that can expand with more topics which can be solved. And I think I don't want to be the only person talking here for this particular question, because we all have amazing experiences to share, like how we reached 5 parts.
So this is a 2-term studio, and during the first term, the first half term, we do a lot of research and field trip, and then we come up with several themes, and through the process, we come to refine those themes and finally come up with those. And we do the field trip. We've been to Santa Monica, Catalina Island, and etc. So that's how we get to the final 5 themes here.
There is also to say the students have looked a lot, right? They've learned to look around and to understand really how transportation is not just about design the vehicle itself or its its features and so on and so forth, but it's really the effort that went into their vision was really to understand what's the role of moving in everyday life, and they set themselves into trying to understand it for themselves, what that would feel like. And I think that through that kind of observation, then each of them kind of started to not play around, but started to be interested mostly in one specific aspect. I remember Darin being interested in understanding how can one of the most polluting agents in the world be actually a provider of clean energy, as well as Kiran trying to understand, yes, but how does that work with the fact that the building industry is also very polluting, and what would that do if we keep building atop? What does that mean, and what are some of the strategies that we can undertake to work with what we have and create something flexible, something that forever is going to be able to kind of embed and respond to future needs and future problems of future moments of crisis, which maybe this brings me as well to respond to the question that is just mostly about why 2040, and that it's mostly something that Lucia and myself have decided upon, is because 2040 is the future, but it's not too far. And so we wanted to challenge the students to think about strategies to grow to what will be a better future and long term with much more technology to come in, and really think about something that is close enough, but far enough in which they could really moderate and understand, and also be able to kind of quasi quantify their changes. That's where 2040 comes in. It's the future, but not too far away.
Yeah, actually, if we look at mobility devices, they have a pretty short life compared with our spaces like buildings. It's way easier to replace a vehicle than replace a street. Also, if we look at communication devices have a very short life, and the technology actually advances very fast. Then looking too close, the vision would have been too rigid, because we would have worked still with some the elements we have today around us, right? For when it comes to transportation, going too far into the future would have become a little too much of a blue sky, which we didn't want. Then we selected this range, not too close, not too far. We have enough flexibility, and then we still know a lot of elements we are going to work with, right? Looking at blue sky, practically there, everything it's available, in so to say. Then that was the reason for us to look at 2040 or around 2040. It was not exactly that year, but around that time.
Yeah, it's just to jump in as well on this, and I have another question lined up too, but yeah, we spend a lot of time in this program future casting, and it's always a question at the beginning of projects, how far into the future should we look? And certainly there are a lot of transportation projects that are in the planning stages now in and around Los Angeles, which will, even though they're being planned now, we won't be able to use them until after 2040 for sure. They take a long time to build. So I think a lot of thought went into 2040. It's a little bit, it's the Goldilocks question. We don't want it so far into the future that it's difficult to really be plausible in what we're thinking, but at the same time, if it's too far, if it's too near term, then nothing much changes. I mean, 2040 is what, 18 years from now. So anyway, it's always a good question. I have another question from Saurabh Rathi. And it's a really interesting one as well, which is probably a thesis project in its own right. But so do you see the system and its components as a template that would be applied across the city, across the metropolis? If yes, how does this preserve the uniqueness or the diversity of different neighborhoods? Or if not, how would it vary from, say, Pasadena to Santa Monica?
I think this is a question that everybody is very excited to respond, because I think we have, I'm just going to say this for the students, we spend probably half of the time of our classes discussing exactly that, how to create a flexible system that works everywhere, but at the same time that celebrates and preserves and gives space to create that kind of diversity. So I'm sure the students will be happy to respond to that.
I think I would start, and I think the team can continue. So yeah, we had multiple conversations. Since I was coming from an architecture background, there was this question of are we doing urban design of actually designing for one particular place, and how will it change from Santa Monica to Pasadena? So to answer your question, we would not call this to be a template, but more of a toolkit. The reason I put this slide here is these toolkits are something which urban designers and architects and planners can use to design more context-oriented streets for, let's say, for Pasadena. You may need, for a particular street in Pasadena, will need a complete different strategy. And that's one of the reasons. One of the strategy is to have activity-oriented street design. So we're not saying this is the activity you have to put there at this particular part, but we're saying it is going to be activity which is generated by the type of people, the demographics of the people there, the kind of culture over there, the kind of mobilities that would be adopted. So the system is so flexible that we don't know what kind of mobilities would certain neighborhoods be preferring more than other neighborhoods as well. So this is only from the space perspective, or in terms of how we looked at the redefining and repurposing the streets of LA with these core structures. But I think my colleagues can also answer more about how even through the mobility devices, we are creating a system which is more flexible.
Yeah, so I would like to add something, because our design of the first three components, they are actually create a holistic template that we can be applied both similarly and differently between the regions. So so I will talk more about the something from the food perspective. So for these days, we're living all in LA area, but the condition for different people who living in different places is different. Like some people living in the place that with easy food access, but somebody they cannot. So the differences also create the inequality. So we're creating this mobility system which can both storing and create food localized, and also being delivery and power and nourish all the regions. So it has different plan in different places. Like some place they already really good in delivery and they have a lot of access of food. Maybe the urban farming will be more applied in the places which suffering in the food lackage of food or places like that. And after that, for the places which nearby the LA port or have more flexible in delivery, they might also serve as the center of distribution and for serving for the delivery for the rest of the places.
Also, I like to add one thing here. When we put together the design brief, me and Julia, as you have noticed, the name of the project has in it vision, meaning this is actually a vision. It's not a plan or a blueprint. It doesn't answer all the questions, but actually challenges many things we have in the present. And the students kind of try to set some directions. These are just directions. They are not specific answers to the many questions we have today. And then we wanted to keep it this way because obviously being 2040, we rationally, we don't have precise and we shouldn't have precise answers for such a time in the future, right? 2040. Then again, this is a vision and it's about directions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lucian. I think that's really important to talk about. You know, usually as designers, we're expected or given the responsibility to come up with a clear idea, a solution, and then to be responsible for overseeing the implementation. But these projects, particularly for graduate level students, are really good opportunities to create visions as well. And as Lucian noted, you know, in the world of transportation, we are dealing with large vested interests in how things are existing at the moment. And for a number of reasons that we know very well why, people are sometimes reluctant to change the status quo because it's more difficult to change than to stay the same. So I think it's really, really important that designers and others as well, but particularly us designers, we flag up these visions occasionally, which really get people to think differently and to ask questions of themselves, which maybe they wouldn't answer if they didn't see a vision. And as Lucian said, it doesn't necessarily mean that what you've seen today is the right solution, or it's going to come into reality one day. But I think it's a really, really powerful way of getting people to think about the future differently. So, wait a minute, I see another question has popped up. Okay, so another one from Nobe, who comments that it is a very big vision with lots of details and facets, and he's curious how you went as a team from project brief to final vision. Can you throw some light on your process and how you coordinated yourselves as a team, which I think actually those are really good questions.
May just start with the fact that we started this project with field research. We went through various parts of LA metropolitan area, which, as the name suggests, LA metropolitan area consists of various counties and towns, cities, neighborhoods. So we had to visit various towns, check out the mobility there, see the problems first person, try various different mobilities ourselves, see the problems and everything. And of course, we ended up with a lot of problems, as you can imagine, even so many problems that at the time and basically the access that we have to the information just doesn't allow us to solve for everything. But what helped us through was to pick the problems that are not only very important at the moment to the environment, to the people, but also what everyone personally is passionate about as well, to follow up. And that's how we went forward. And each of us in the team worked on various different tasks, went and delved deeper into a specific topic. And then we coordinated at the same time, making sure that what we're creating is always a system, not just systems within systems that are not coordinating. I think that's the project that we presented to you.
Yeah, I think our instructor play an important role of coordinating us. So it's a 2-term long studio, and we have different leaders in different phases, and that not only practice our ability to be the leader of our 5 guys, but also try to practice how to coordinate group work, separate group work, so we won't feel pressure from
I also want to. Oh, sorry, Lauren. Go ahead.
Sorry. And this is a really exciting project for all of us, because from the start, we don't know where we will be. So it's just like in journey without destination, and we're all trying to figure out the part we are typically interested, and also make sure it's work in the group. To be honest, it was super hard at the start, but it seems going on well as we communicate a lot and trying to put it in the same context that serve for LA 2040.
And just to add something here, then this is the role of the instructors, not to tell the students everything, but actually to force them to find themselves the answers to the many questions, because we didn't want the students to do something we imagine as instructors what we wanted. We wanted them to actually be free to find the solutions. Then all this presentation is practically a student presentation, and it's student work. We practically give them some advice, but we didn't manage this project. We were on the side, and this is most of it student work.
I think maybe what Lucien and I did as instructor was just to ask more questions, which sometimes for the students was very stressful. I see them now smiling, but I know that it was stressful and intense in many turns, but that's what we did. We asked them more questions over and over. But I also want to say something that goes back to what Darin as well as Lorraine and Arya were mentioning, is that what also happened in coordinating their efforts, it was that they developed a way to speak to one another that crossed different kind of design expertise and passion into creating one object that was really the result of 5 different designers speaking very different languages in terms of design language, and also interested in very different things. And I think that was where both Lucian and I agreed that this was a very successful formula. The fact that they now can go out there and be able to work not only in team, but work in teams with people that do not have their expertise, and bring their expertise to the foreground to help create something that it's holistic and that it's not just a minutia details that is overly designed. I think that's goes to them, and that, you know, it took a little while, and at the beginning was a lot of questions, but you all developed a way to speak to one another, and the leads have been fantastic in really keeping the things together and really making this a project of 5 designers. Your voices are very distinct at each turn, but together they create something that is one voice, one message, which I think is very powerful.
I think there's something else we should add here for the benefit of our audience as well. And that is this particular team signed up for this program a couple of years ago, just as COVID launched itself. And they didn't even arrive in Los Angeles until September of 2021. So I'm not sure whether they were smart or crazy in signing up for a program that they couldn't even join, but they were brave enough to do so. And so, but that's another factor where I think they deserve a pat on the back here, because they got to know Los Angeles firsthand almost after the fact. I mean, they've been very busy since they arrived here in Los Angeles, trying to understand what makes Los Angeles the way it is, and probably quite different environment from where they originally came from. And so it's worth a big pat on the back that they picked up and absorbed what Los Angeles means so quickly and enthusiastically as well. So I just wanted to make sure that the audience understood that too. We don't have any more questions. I'm keeping an eye on the attendees, and I'm noticing 1 or 2 are beginning to drop off now. So maybe this is a time to start winding up. But I would like to thank very much everybody who joined this webinar. Thank you for hanging in here. I'm pretty sure you'll have found most of it really interesting. I've left my email address somewhere in the chat box if any of you want to get hold of the recording and the link. Either reply to your original webinar invitation, which will come back to me, or email me anyway, and we'll happily forward it to you. It's great to see some familiar names in the audience, some former students and some former instructors as well. Really appreciate your support and the great questions that you asked. And also very happy to see some other old friends of the department and the school as well. I mean, old as in friends that have been with us for a while. So, anything else that we would like to say?
I would just like to congratulate all the students for their work, for their effort. I want to congratulate the students who this summer will have internships, and wish them good luck and have fun. I think in real life it's gonna be much easier than during this project. You're gonna tell me when you come back. And well, I wish you good luck and have a nice break for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I also want to tell the students and celebrate their efforts. And really, I want you to be proud of what you've been able to achieve all together. Like the way you've worked together throughout all this, what is it, 28 weeks? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
28 weeks as being really, it gives us hope, and your curious, interrogative minds and the way you apply that to think about design, I think it's something that it's really worth celebrating. And I hope that this, inspires many, many more events like this. You have paved the way for future cohorts to really follow your lead, and for sure you have set the bar quite high. I think that that's what it is. And well, I look forward to see everything you're about to do in your future, and yeah, excited for your internships and for everything you will be accomplishing.
And I think at one time you maybe ask yourselves, what are your limits? I think in this project you found what your limits are, and then you found that actually they are much, much higher than you thought. Also, I'm sure you got a lot of experience. You need it, and you're gonna use in the future in your professional projects, and you're gonna see that it's much easier than you thought.
Well said. Okay, so thank you all very much. Thank you, presenters, for doing a fantastic job. Thank you to our audience for hanging in there with us. And we look forward to seeing many of you in person at some point in the future too. So we will close the show. Thank you. Take care all. And I'll be seeing the students, Lucian and Julia, in a little while. So, okay. Bye for now.
Guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
you.
thanks everyone. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.